we had a really fun time several weeks ago with the last Skill of the Week session. Back, I think starting in February, I did a live 10-week course called Skill of the Week, where we pulled several skills, 10 of them to be exact, that beginner and intermediate players tend to struggle with. And we said, we're just going to tackle one skill per week and get a little better at that skill. So we did, alternate picking for a week, we did bar chords for a week, and then we did some other things that were less technical and more just developing yourself as a musician. One of the ones we did was get a little better at defining your style. That's a skill. Defining your style is a skill. Becoming your own player is a skill. So we had a lot of great feedback from that 10-week live course. I've gotten a lot of messages about it, which has been really, really fun to see people interacting with the course. And so later on this summer, we're announcing a second 10 weeks where we're going to take 10 different skills, and we're going to do Skill of the Week for 10 more weeks. These skills, just to whet your appetite a little bit, starting with week 1, switching between chords. We didn't cover that in the first 10 weeks. Switching between chords, it doesn't matter what level of guitar player you're at. Depending on the types of chords you're playing, depending on the tempo, switching between chords can be really difficult. So we're going to be covering that within the 10 weeks. Practicing scale patterns. What's the best way? This is week 2. What's the best way to practice and apply scales? How can we get better at that as guitar players? Week 3, fret hand strength. Everybody needs fret hand strength. What are some things that you can do to develop stamina and strength in your fretting hand? Staying relaxed while you're playing. As you're trying to build tempos, as you're trying to get better at playing scales, as you're playing challenging songs with faster strumming, whatever it is, or finger picking or whatever, how do you maintain looseness and musicality when you're playing something that's maybe a bit too challenging for you that you want to be able to play? The key is staying loose and not thinking so much about what you're playing in terms of how difficult it is, but getting into the music. So we're going to work on that quite a bit. And with that, we're going to segue in week 5 into training your ear. Week 6 is going to be creating cool chords. How do you create cool chords and get away from just basic stuff? And then we're going to transition from there to creating cool chord progressions. So we've created cool chords. How can you develop an ear to create chord progressions that don't just sound like anything else you've ever heard, that maybe borrow from things that you've heard, but that are unique to your place creatively? And that week, that's week 7, creating cool chord progressions, is what we're going to be working with in this particular session. We're not going to be, but we're going to be looking at a little different angle. With Skill of the Week coming up later this summer, we're going to be approaching it from, okay, we've got cool chords. We know how to make cool chords and modify basic chords to make things sound a little more interesting. Let's take that and start joining chords together. With this session that we're working on today, we're going to be working on getting a chord progression from a melody that's been spinning around in your head. How do you develop a chord progression from something that you might be whistling or is trapped in your head? I think we've all had melodies just sort of trapped in our head before. Sometimes maybe it's a melody that someone else made up and it's stuck in your head. Sometimes it's an offshoot of that. Sometimes it's just a melody that you're mowing the lawn or whatever, and somehow you have this melody get into your head. So what we're going to be doing is answering the question, how do you take a melody, some music that's in your head, and create a progression that fits that melody? Believe it or not, it is a matter of trial and error. And there's a lot of theory, there's a lot of life experience, musical experience that makes it easier. But the thing that I have found that's the very best for this sort of application, if you have a melody and you want to figure out how to play the chords that go with the melody, so you're developing a chord progression that goes with this melody that you're hearing in your head, the best way to do this, I've found, is to utilize simple recording. When you do that, you can put the melody down. You can play the melody on the guitar, sing the melody in. I would recommend playing the melody because your pitch stays the same. When you're singing, you have no real bearing for, well, am I on pitch, am I off pitch, if there's no other instruments. But we can play the melody, and then we can experiment with chords that sound good underneath the melody. Once we experiment with chords that sound good underneath the melody, we can then take the basic chords or the basic sort of framework and choose positions, choose rhythms, we can create our underpinnings for the melody itself. So really what we're doing is we're talking about arranging. I feel like this is a really common thing that beginner and intermediate guitar players who want to be creative sometimes struggle with. They got a melody, they don't know what to do with it. So that's what we're going to be working on in this session. Before we dive into the real application of it, and before I present the melody that I've had stuck in my head for a little while now, are there any comments or questions about this, what we're talking about the sale, about anything that we could address for you?
Okay, Jason, let's see here. Am I coming through? All right, let's see here. Okay, I'll just use this. Okay, so we've had a couple questions. There are some questions for you, Chris.
Okay.
And then we have had some more questions in regards to the sale. So I'll cover that real quick. One of the questions that we're getting: what's the difference between the Pro and the standard year? So the Pro does provide a little bit extra service. One of the main things that it provides over the standard is a one-on-one consultation with an instructor. This is a 45-minute to an hour consultation that what we'd like to do with you is sit down, look at where your guitar playing is now, help you set some goals for what you want from your guitar playing, and then help create both a practice and a lesson plan that will suit getting you to those goals. Now, if that's not what you want from the consultation, if you want a lesson on the pentatonic scales, we can certainly do that as well, but we kind of envision it as a planning session so that you get the most out of the JamPlay service and progress towards your goal quickly. You also get extra bundles with that. There is a t-shirt that gets sent out with that. There's some priority handling and live events that we do with the Pro members on there. And then what am I missing here? You do obviously get the year, and then there are 25 download credits. And let me go over those download credits. What that means is that you can take complete ownership of any lesson that you choose to use it on. One credit is one lesson. Doesn't matter if the lesson is 5 minutes or 2 hours. One credit is one lesson, and you take ownership of that for life. So you can download it, put it on any device that you want, and you do not have to have an active JamPlay membership to come back and re-download it if you need to. You simply attempt to log into the account, and through the account portion of the website, you have access to everything that you've claimed there. So it comes with 25 of those, and that's the difference between the Pro membership and the standard year membership on that. Wanted to just address again that if you do currently have a JamPlay membership, even if you're in the middle of it, you can take advantage of it. What will happen is the new time gets posted at the end of your current paid time. So let's say that you have a year membership and you have 6 months left on it. You could purchase now, and what would happen is you would gain a year after 6 months. So it would pay you then to, since this is July 2nd, it would pay you to July 2nd of 2000, or sorry, it would end up paying you to probably like December of 2018, whatever you had your, your remaining time left. So from that standpoint, I hope that covers some of the stuff that I've been seeing in there. And we'll get to the first question here for you. This is from Ewing Jesus Fella Aravalo. Hopefully I didn't butcher that. He wants to know what model your Strat is, but we've also gotten other questions in regards to what your instrument is. So if you could go through quickly what's on it, what you're using, strings, picks, the pickups, everything from that standpoint.
Sure. Okay, so we'll start with the guitar. This is an American Deluxe Strat. It is, I think I bought it in 2010. and it's become my main guitar. I bought it as an HSS, which means single here, humbucker here. It had the Fender Hot pickup here, and it had the two N1 noiseless by Fender here. But I quickly learned, oh, and it had the S1 switches system down here, and you know, a lot of other fun things down there. I quickly learned that that setup wasn't for me. I preferred the more traditional Strat sound, but I wanted noiseless stuff. So I took all of that out. I still have that pickguard, but I haven't put it in since. And I replaced it with DiMarzio pickups. So this is the Area series, and so I've got a standard Strat setup from DiMarzio in terms of the pickups, but the switch is wired a little differently than a typical Strat. In a traditional Strat, when you're in the bridge pickup mode, you've got your tone knob, this tone, and when you've got when you're in quack mode or position 2, your tone knob would this tone knob would control both of these pickups. In this setup, this tone knob here controls only the back pickup, and this pickup here has this tone knob. So we've got this tone knob for this pickup and this tone knob for this pickup. This pickup is wired completely without a tone knob, so it's always wide open in terms of tone, which creates some cool possibilities when you're playing in these middle ones, because you can roll off the this brighter one and maintain the crispness of the middle pickup. It's got the deluxe floating bridge here, which I love. I came from playing Ibanez Floyd Rose guitars, or Floyd Rose, you know, whatever their main Floyd Rose sound is, or bridge. And this is a good balance for me because it gives me the flexibility to use the whammy bar like I like to, but I don't have to worry about locking nuts and rebalancing it all the time. It's nice. And the other thing that, coming from the Ibanez guitars, that I really appreciate about this is it's got the this came from the Jeff Beck Signature Strat. It's got a roller nut on it. So, you know, the creaking that you sometimes hear when you're using the bar, when you're bending, because the string gets stuck up here. You know, it used to be that I would, you know, on some of my other guitars, I'd take some graphite, you know, with a pencil, and you know, get some graphite in there and make sure that those were good. So that they would slip okay. The roller nut completely removes that. I've never had any problems with that. The strings flow between tuners and the fretboard really nicely, and I can really reef on this whammy bar and things still stay in tune, thanks in part to the roller nut, but also to the locking tuners on the back, which are standard on the American Deluxe. So the only thing I really did to it was pull out all the electronics. The rest of this stuff is just there. And I love this guitar. I record with it. You know, this is on so many recordings. It's great. This guitar and the Telly that you've seen me play on some lessons probably those are the two main guitars that I use. I love the Telly for rhythms, for heavy rhythms actually. I think it sounds great. But it's a really versatile guitar also. I feel like between this Strat and the Telly, and then I've got a couple Ibanez's with some humbuckers on them, I can pretty much get any sound or style that I want, which is important for the kind of guitar playing I do, because I'm always tasked as a jingle and custom music writer for things that go to radio and TV. I'm always tasked with, hey, you got to sound like this, or you got to sound like this, or you know, there's always something that I'm supposed to be imitating, and it's wonderfully fun. I love it. And it's a challenge, and it's really neat to be able, you know, which guitar would work the best? Okay, well now I've got to learn a new little skill because I don't know how to do that, so I better figure it out real quick so I can play like that or do this or that. But this ends up being, certainly for the lessons that I do on JamPlay, and for most of the recording, this is my first grab. Like, oh, can I make it work on the Strat? Yeah, okay, I'll do that. So. As far as the other gear that I'm using today, this is a little different than I normally use, because I'm actually just going through an Avid interface and then into Logic, because I've got some things that are pertaining to developing chords under Melody that we're working on today. Typically, for presentational purposes here at JamPlay, I go through the following signal chain. I go through a TU3 chromatic tuner by Boss, and then I go through an Emerson drive, which is an overdrive, but it's a clean overdrive. It's sort of a dirty boost pedal. Fantastic. I have that on almost all the time when we're doing stuff, even when I'm playing clean. Then I go into a Tube Screamer, a TS-808 by Ibanez, and then I go into a Digitech Time Bender delay. And the Time Bender delay has all sorts of cool, it's got a little bit of loop stuff on it, it's got all sorts of great funky guitar sounds, and it's a fantastic tempo delay as well. That all goes into the front of an Avid 11 rack, which is set up as a clean into a Fender Princeton Reverb knockoff. I'm pretty sure that's what it's going into. But it's clean, it doesn't break up much, and I run all the effects, at least in this environment, up front, so that I can just control it all from the pedal board, depending on what I need. For my recording setup at home, I use a variety of different things. I've got, a stack of pedals, and the primary amp that I'll use is a PV Classic 30. That's a very versatile amp, goes dirty to clean, takes pedals really well, and that's mic'd up with an SM57 and a WA87, which is by Warma Audio. It's a U87 condenser mic knockoff. And then those are going into preamps and stuff like that, which all that together works well as a sound. But I do also use a lot of modeling for recording because I can't possibly get all the sounds I want to I need tons of amps. So the main amp software package that I'm using right now is Bias Effects by Positive Grid. I also use Waves GTR, and then the stock, I use this stuff a lot, the stock effects and amps in Logic. Logic, which is what you're going to be hearing today. It's amazing. For as simple and free as they are, they really can sound good. So that's an overview of how I work. It's different for everybody. Just depends on what your needs are, and there's really no right or wrong answer when it comes to gear. But the trick is just to ask yourself, what do you want to do? What do you need to do? And surround yourself with the tools to make it happen. There you go.
Hey, Chris. Chris here.
Hey.
Got some more questions if you want to take a couple here.
Sure.
Okay. This one's from Danielle. And the question is, it may be a bit early for this question, but are certain lessons better for different guitars?
Certain lessons better for different guitars. Yes. I would say maybe, but I think maybe something to think about would be certain letters are maybe more suited towards different guitar players. I think it goes back to where I left off with what I was saying about gear. How do you want to play? What do you want to do? We at JamPlay we have you guys as members or users of the site. You can take lessons on pretty much whatever you want to take, and the instructors are going to be using a guitar that is suited well for the content that they are teaching. You don't necessarily have to use, I'm playing a Strat. Will my lesson that I'm teaching here this morning, or all the lessons I teach on the site, do you have to play a Strat? No. Do you have to play an electric? Sometimes you should be on electric, but I'll make sure and state that sort of thing, and most of the instructors will. I won't be teaching flamenco lessons on a Strat. Marcelo was one of our main flamenco guitar players. He did actually teach some stuff on an electric, and the influence that flamenco has on his electric guitar playing, and that was really neat. But I think the best way to look at it really is a guitar is a tool, and if you're taking a lesson that has playing that you want to play, that you want, it's based on an area of your guitar playing that you want to improve, but you don't have the equipment to do it, then figure out how you can get that equipment to do it. If you really want to play flamenco guitar, but all you have is a Strat, then consider investing in a flamenco guitar. But most of the time, if you have either an electric or an acoustic, maybe one of each, you'll be able to do what most skills on the guitar are going to require of you. Hope that answered the question.
Okay, maybe we sneak one more in here
Sure.
before we get back to teaching here. This one is also from Ewing, and I think this is a good one. This is one we get asked a lot. I have a question. What is the best option for beginners, acoustic or electric guitar?
I started, and I've told this story before, so sorry for those of you who have heard this before, but I think it's a really relevant answer to this question. I started on an acoustic guitar. It was my dad's Yamaha guitar, and I didn't really get very far. You know, the action felt high. You know, I go back and play that guitar now, and it's fine, you know. But the action was high. My hands were weak. I was 14 years old, and I could never get the sound that I wanted to out of it. And you know, I think maybe it wasn't set up the best. Strings were old, but it wasn't until I heard Collective Soul's Shine, the solo on Shine, that I really got bit by the bug to play the guitar, and it was the electric. You know, that's what I really wanted to do. And it was interesting, once I got an electric guitar, the urge to play, you know, I figured out all the chords and was able to play and strum and that I'd been wanting to on the acoustic really, really quickly. Plus, I you know, was able to go up and down the neck and experiment with amps. And, you know, I had a fantastic first year of playing the guitar. It just took off. And I think a big part of that was that the electric guitar was just flat out easier to play. I was able to make sounds that I was happy with easier. And while I don't know that you know, some people really may just not like electric guitar. They really might want to be that singer-songwriter, acoustic sort of guy, and so you should start on a really well set up acoustic guitar. But for me, and I know a lot of people that I've taught over the years, starting on an electric was the key to getting them going. Because it is so much easier, because you can make sounds more quickly. It's easier on your hands. So you get stuff like bar chords and your basic chords, and even, you know, moving around the neck and scales because there's more room. You get that stuff more easily just because they're easier to play. So my recommendation, based on my experience, is that if you're a bare bones beginner, you don't have a guitar yet, and you want to get into it, unless for some reason you know that you don't want to play electric guitar, start on electric. Buy yourself a decent electric, and then play for 8 months or so. See if, you know, it takes off and this is something you want to continue, and then buy a halfway decent acoustic. And have one of each. I think it's important to have one of each. Really important to have one of each. And that brings up, you know, how much do you spend on your first guitar? Well, I think that it's really easy to, you know, just like anything, oh, I want to get into something, I'll buy a nice starter guitar. And so you go and you spend $100 on something that you found at Target or whatever, and I think the same thing there applies to me in my acoustic story, that you're not really going to want to play it. It's never going to be set up right. It's not built to a spec to make good music. If you are wanting to get into guitar and you want to get into it and do it for real, I wouldn't spend any less than about $400 on my first guitar, whether it's an electric or acoustic. And that might be expensive for some, and if you have to spend less, you have to spend less. But at that price point in general, you get something that's going to last you, that you could record with, that you could play gigs with, that's going to stay in tune, that's going to remain, it's going to hold its setup when it gets set up. That it's not going to have weird things on there like uneven frets and just things that keep beginners from excelling. I forget which guitar player I heard. I think it might have been John Mayer who said this several years ago. But he said that he feels like it's more important for a beginner to have a really, really nice guitar than it is for a really advanced player, a professional player, for example, to have a really nice guitar. Because the professional player has years of experience to draw from, be like, oh, this guitar is screwed up. They know immediately that the guitar is screwed up because they can play and they know what a good guitar feels like. A beginner isn't going to know that the reason that they can't do something might be because their guitar is just not set up right. Why, whenever I play the C chord and I fret this note on the first fret, I can't ever get it right? Well, it's because there's a burr on your fret and it's not allowing you to press that note down. It's the guitar's fault. You want to be careful about blaming the instrument, but there are those things that can creep in, and if you're a beginner, you don't know that. You might frustrate yourself because simply the guitar just isn't set up right. It isn't right. So, long-winded answers to simple questions, but hopefully these are getting you guys off on the right foot.
Okay, we got more questions, but
let's take another 5 minutes, and then we'll get into what we're doing here.
All right, this one is from Trevor.
Hi, Trevor.
Do you need a different guitar or strings to play songs that have a really low tuning?
Yes, you do. I use 9s for the most part in standard tuning. Even if I go down to drop D, I prefer the feel of a drop D guitar with 10s. If you're going to do lower tunings than that, at least 10s, probably 11s. And the reason is because the strings start to feel too slinky and too slinky. You want to be able to dig in and play, especially at those low tunings with those heavier songs. And so definitely lower tunings and even alternate tunings will require different string gauges. But when you do that, it's not as simple as, oh, I want to go down to open D on this guitar. Let me just throw a thicker pair of strings on there and tune up. The string tension changes the way the whole guitar is set up. It changes the action height because you've got thicker strings. It changes the tension on the springs in the back of the guitar, which will change the angle of the bridge, which changes the feel of how you play. Many times it requires adjusting the nut to more, bigger gaps or closing those gaps. So if you choose, the way I've done it is I've made sure that I've got guitars that are set up for that. So my Tele has 10s on it. So if I want to do drop D, or some sort of variation, then I can do that. Now, on an acoustic guitar, I tend to take the approach, and a very fantastic, one of the best guitarists in the world that was just here does this same thing. Phil Keggy was here a little while ago doing a live event, and we're currently working through his on-demand content. He uses, and this is what I've done too, but a lot of guitar players will do this for acoustic guitar, and just choose a good medium gauge for your acoustic guitar. And for the most part, if you're not too light, you'll be able to go and play alternate tunings and go in and out of alternate tunings really, really well. That said, if you're consistently in like an open C or drop C where you're dropping a lot of strings, you will need to go to a thicker gauge on your acoustic as well.
Okay, squeeze one more in here. This is a really common one, really good question. As a beginner, I still have trouble with chord transition from open to bar. Any general help?
Sure. Join Skill of the Week coming up later this summer, and we'll be talking about that on week 1. To get you started, though, between open and barred. Turn my guitar up here a little. The best way that I found to do this is to go into the open chord that you're transitioning with your first finger free. So if I'm playing an E chord and I want to go to any E form bar chord, I don't have to do this. See how much more work that is? I'm using common fingers. I'm sliding this E form up and going for the bar chord. just adding the bar, as opposed to this. Common fingers are absolutely the best way to switch between chords, period. Now, what if you're not going from an E to an E form bar chord? Well, you can pretty much do this with any chord. Let's say I'm going from an A, and then I'm going to an F. Kind of a cool transition. That's difficult. But if my pointer finger's free, and I'm used to switching between chords without my first finger, if I'm used to doing that anyway, then this is a lot less work. A lot less work. What about like C? Right there, my third finger, my ring finger, acts as a common finger. So find your common fingers, and those are a couple ways to find common fingers. We'll go into much more depth and lots of applied examples during my course in that first week, but that'll get you started.
Okay, let's get to some teaching here.
Cool, okay, so this is the melody. It's in the key of, well, we don't even care what key it's in at the moment. We're gonna roll off some tone here. So that melody's in your head for whatever reason. What are the chords? Here's a great way to not only figure out what the chords are going to be, but start honing your arranging skills as well. So what I've done is I have Logic open, but you could do this with any sort of guitar software, GarageBand, anything. I chose a simple drum loop that works with the tempo and the melody that I wanna record and play, so that I can figure out the chords. Here's the drum loop, and I'm just gonna. There it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play and record. First I'm going to sync that melody into this groove and make it sound right. Make it be the melody that I really want it to be. So I'm going to practice it a couple times. Okay, so is that the right feel for it? I think so. Let me just try playing it half the time and see, if that. I think I actually like that better, and I think it's also going to help me figure out the chords. But I like the meditative feel. I like how I spend more time on each note. I like what that does. So I'm going to try that again. I like it. I like the feel of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to record that. Doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be there. And then we're going to figure out what chords can, what chords should. It's a mixture of those two words. What chords will work under there. So here we go. I'm going to record it. Whoa. Okay, listening. Okay, so right off, there's a couple things about the melody that, it's not perfect, but that's okay. We don't really care that much. What we want to know is we want to know what we can do with this melody. What kind of chords can go under this melody? The first thing we need to do is figure out what our tonal center is. Clearly, when we listen to that melody, that's where we end up. It doesn't start, well, it starts there and it ends there. Typically, your tonal center, or the key that your song's in, is going to be the note that it starts on and ends on most of the time. So, I'm going to say, I'm just going to hunt and peck. We know it's that note, I just played the melody. Okay, C. So, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to strum C along with this whole passage and see how, because we know that this is the note, we know this is the key. So, I'm going to make this a little cleaner sounding. We're just going to play along, strum the C with our melody. Actually, for maybe a certain part of the song, might work. You might want that sort of pedal tone. That's what that's called, when you hold one note or one chord over a bunch of different changes. But we want to get a little more creative. When we want to know the possibilities, we want to experiment with possibilities. Here's where a little bit of knowledge of how chords work together is helpful, but you really can just start trying stuff. And if your ear likes it, great. Let's assume for now that this melody is in the key of C and that we have the key of C chords to draw from. So we know from that, and if you don't know that, this very, very available information. We've got C, then we've got D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor. We'll say those are the chords that we have. We have B diminished in there. That might be too weird for this sort of conventional sort of melody. So again, the chords in the key of C that we can choose from, because we're in the key of C, and when you harmonize the C scale, these are the chords that become available to you. We have C, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, and A minor. C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor. So any of those chords we could try underneath this melody and start making mental notes of where we like each chord. So let's try a couple things. That's interesting, D minor. That doesn't sound that great. C doesn't sound great over that. I love C here though. Ooh. Need to change there. Okay. So the D minor was kind of interesting. I liked it. I don't know if it's that might be good for maybe later in the song if I was developing this out. It might be good for maybe the second time around. It might be good if we establish with some good, like, hard-hitting, you know, comfort chords that fit this melody, because it is kind of a comfortable melody. So I like that C to F. Ooh, a G right there. F here again. G again. Okay, so C, F, and G. 1, 4, 5. See, it made a lot of sense with that melody. It won't always be the case, but this is a simple example. That doesn't mean it has to be those chords. We also have D minor, E minor, and A minor. Let's see if we can work those in at all. No. G. A minor there. Cool. Ooh, I like there. Okay, so instead of just going to the G at the end, we could go to the D minor first. Okay? We're just using our ear. We could get in there and go, oh, I'm playing that note and what's the notes in the chords, but we're just experimenting. So let's try it again. Let's see if we can incorporate all of the minor chords in there. Might get too complicated, we might eliminate some, but let's see what happens if we try it. This is the trial and error that you guys can do too with this very scenario. It may not come as quickly because you haven't tried it before, but as you do it more, this sort of exercise works really well over any melody with any chords. Start over again because I missed something. I kind of like the idea of including that E there. Could we do E minor there? That's kind of cool. So we go to, I think we should go directly to G there and then save D minor for later. A minor, we used it. It's working nicely. I think we've used all the chords. We just got to tighten it up a little bit. F. A minor. Yeah. What if we did... What if we went to G? So what we've done here, and you know, we had so many great questions, we didn't even have time to get into the half of what I had planned. So if we have more time this afternoon that we need to burn, I'd be happy to continue this journey with you. We can substitute chords. We can get out of playing just these basic chords and come up with a little, you know. We can go out and come up with a kind of a chord part, connect different chords together using the melody as inspiration. All sorts of fun things you can do. But what I hope we've gotten from this section so far is this. If you have a melody in your head, get it down and then play with it and see how your ears react to putting different chords under it. It can be as simple as 1, 4, 5, but as you just saw, we're able to incorporate every other chord in the key of C into this in a really, really cool way, cool and musical way.